As mentioned, there is nothing wrong with this organization before. It's not, for example, that we're trying to change something which is bad and we're improving it, but rather actually we're doing it differently. So again, similar to any other basically organization back in the 40s, I mean, the initiation of the aviation started, and again, through the different journeys at the point of time, everything was handled under the Civil Aviation Authority here in Saudi. In 2014, basically, it was called Air Navigation Services or Airway Engineering under the Civil Aviation Authority. And back in 2015, the whole Civil Aviation Authority became General Authority of Civil Aviation under a new entity with a very clear mandate that they need to start corporatizing. What does corporatizing mean? That they need to, differentiate between the regulator part, which is what they're doing right now, as well as what do you call it, the operational part. And similar to, for example, the airport operation, the air navigation services is an operational arm of the civil aviation. So the decision was, how can we spin off this operation to have a standalone organization? And that actually started in 2016, where legally, transactionally, everything was set up in June 2016 as a company, but not before 2017 that we start working on changing that concept and become a proper, highly effective organization as well. And that's where we kicked off the journey back in 2017. And the transformation continued until today, and we'll continue basically trying to ensure that we're operating as a strong and effective corporate under the name of Saudi Air Navigation Services Organization as well. So what happened during that time, and again, the journey started earlier than before I come, but what happened during that time, we start putting the different milestone of our journey. So we said, as a new corporate, so what does that mean? How can we define that? We started with the vision, with the mission statement, and with the different pillars that we'd like to focus on as well. And we kicked off our journey capability. We had to recruit, get certain capability from the outside. And again, we had an organization which is highly effective when it comes to, and highly technical organization when it comes to delivering the air traffic management. And as Abdurrahman mentioned, actually, we're more than 30 locations in Saudi. We're managing every single airport. We're managing every single operation that for every single aircraft that go to our airspace, whether from the operational part, from the maintenance part, from the governance part as well. So we had huge operation that were taking care of this. And trust me, it was running perfectly even before we become a corporate. Yet, I think the step that we were trying to miss, for example, so why we're doing all of that? What's really the objective of that? And where are we heading in the future as well? And I think that's where the corporate aspect was very essential, that we put it into perspective as well. And on top of that, one of the clear mandate from the government that we need to be financially independent and be financially sustainable as well. So we should not be, for example, a burden on the government, but rather we should be a source of revenue. So we still need to deliver things technically strong, operationally strong, with the right safety in mind as well. Nevertheless, we need to start being a revenue source of engine as well. So that's why we need to ensure that whatever we invest, we have a proper return of investment as well. And so we start putting the right CapEx into place. And just like any other organization, we're here to serve. And when you serve, you actually need to basically start billing your customers as well. And our customers are airlines. And what are airlines always looking for? Much less cost in their operations. So they pay us to serve them as their air traffic controller services. So they're looking, how can we basically reduce our fees to them as well? And it's not the right approach that we continue increasing our fees. So that's why we need to provide productivity. Productivity in two fronts. Number one, that we grow the business without basically growing the cost. And that's what we actually mentioned by productivity in the organization. It doesn't mean that we reduce headcount. And there's always a dilemma over there, for example. People think, for example, we have a new organization, new corporate, we're going to start laying off people. No, that's not the case. What we said that we are growing as an organization. There are increased number of services that we're going to be providing. But how can we do that with the same number of people, or with basically a slightly increased number of people, and without adding additional cost on the organization, which will be reflected later on our customers? We put the vision into place that we become a regional and a strong ANSP provider, ANSP, which is Air Navigation Service Provider as well. We said that we'd like to be a leader because we are the biggest in this region. However, previously we were looked at only a service provider. Now would like to be a pioneer service provider that we actually can deliver something with a high quality, with a high service, with the right basically cost in mind. And we clearly said, and which we have reflected in our mission, that we'd like to provide that safe, because when it comes to aviation, there is no space for any error. So we need to do everything 100% safe, reliable. You cannot basically expect that an airplane or aircraft flying through our airspace and not getting the service simply because we have an issue in our system. That's not even acceptable. So safe, reliable are the true crucial thing in our service. And again, as mentioned, we'd like to do that with a cost efficient. So we continue managing our cost by investing in what? And I think that's really the key message that we would like to start by when we said we'd like to have a different corporate culture in place, for example, investing in the true asset, which is people. And of course, technology, and of course, the right partnership in the different organization. We did that by defining 5 different pillars: safe operation, efficient operation, people-focused, financial effectiveness, and strategic partnership. And for us, that was really the starting point. And it was very important from us from day one. We said very clearly, we're here to do things better, not because it was done differently, it was wrong when it was done wrong, but rather do things basic better in order to ensure that we really drive the safe, reliable operation. And we wanted to make it very clear from day one. We're here to invest in people. We're here to grow capability. We're here to have an organization which is continuously improving, an organization which is performance-based, an organization that will really rely on ensuring that we deliver the right things through the people, and of course, with the technology and the right partnership as well. Having said that, we put a journey. And again, similar to a lot of government organization, the investment was done only in the basic for sustainability, and growth was part of there, but growth requires a lot of capex investment. So government was always looking at, for example, how to do things, for example, with being very, very cautious, ensuring, for example, the investment is basically done step by step, but rather, for example, we had the end in mind at that point of time, which is basically a part of our vision. And keep in mind, for example, when I say the government did, for example, lately, the government even started operating with that mentality. If you're aware that Saudi have actually defined the 2030 vision, which is basically the ambition of where we'd like to go over there as well. So everything that we're doing right now is even linked to our government vision as well, but we're doing it as a small corporate under the big umbrella, which is basically the Saudi 2030 vision as well. We said at that point of time, let's go ahead and understand what's happening in the organization. So we decided that phase 1 will be operation uplifting. So we'd like to understand what's happening. What are the quick fixes? What are the essential things that we'd like to work on as well? What is the right organization to support that as well? And again, if you look at every single step in our journey, we focus on the people, on the organization, to ensure, for example, they are the key player in doing so as well. And then once we fix that, we start optimizing and standardizing how to do, for example, things in a more optimized way, in a more cost-efficient way, in a more, for example, forward-looking way as well. And that's where we are actually almost there today. And the third part, which is basically sustainability innovation, which is basically how can we continuously grow? How can we basically be more of innovation and bringing new ideas to grow the business as well. Having said that, that's what basically the journey was into place. And just to clarify, in every single step, and I recall when we joined at that point of time, we wanted to make sure that the journey and the changes and the activities is basically being done through the people. And I recall, for example, even Abdurrahman was basically through Basakhat when they came, we were very clear in that intention that basically we need to understand if we're going to do all of that, our people will do it. So how can we make sure, example, that we really provide to them a culture so they can continue innovation and they can continue to basically delivering and performing their best as well. Some explanation of the different pillar that we went through as well. I would like to focus a lot on the people, on the middle pillar, which is the people focused, and which says, for example, that we want as an organization to have really an inspiring work environment. If you're gonna come and ask for people to do a lot of activities, and you're gonna tell me people that you can go through major transformation as well, I want to make sure, for example, they are being satisfied. I always look at myself as the leader of this organization. My number one task, for example, that to ensure that every single employee is coming to this organization and ready to perform. And how can I do that? By providing to them the proper work environment, the proper empowering, the proper support. I mean, it's basically very common in some organization where, unfortunately, for example, that in some organization they look at, for example, the boss or the leader will take certain decisions, for example, or sign certain contracts, and that's the job. But honestly speaking, for example, the true leadership definition over here for me and for the organization is basically how can we enable the organization and how can we support the organization? Because if every employee is going to come to this organization empowered and he believes or she believes that this is the right place to work out, the amount and the huge deliverable from that person will be amazing. And of course, you need to also reward them, and you need to basically continuously give, for example, pay back to them with a proper growth as well. So we said the people focus pillar will basically dedicated to build an inspiring work organization, empowering Sage employees with talent development program that will actually build a performance-driven culture as well. And again, there's a lot of work basically behind that, which I will explain later on, inshallah. And again, and as Sans focused on uplifting the people, key achievements were accomplished at that point of time. And again, I'm just going to go through them very quickly, but we're going to be discussing further as well. Establishing a full-scale tool of the system as well, again, which is part of the basic. We need to understand, so what is missing right now for people to know their rights, what is missing right now for people to understand how they should operate on a day in, day out, and what is missing for now, basically to have all this information accessible to the people. So we start by building a comprehensive HR foundation. We really put all the different systems. And again, keep in mind that government systems are a bit different from the corporate system as well. We're here more of performance-based. Over there, basically, the government, for example, it was a bit different at that point of time. So we went and we reviewed all the different HR systems, and that was part of building the foundation. We looked at, for example, what are the skill metrics we're looking for, what are the organization we're looking for, what is the right structure, and for example, what if even the pay grade that we need to put in the system as well. How can we ensure, for example, that people are aware, how can they get promoted, how they can grow in the system? Do they have a clear growth plan that they can work on as well? And adding to that, for example, how can we give accessibility to people? So, and a simple thing, for example, we're located in more than 30 locations in the country, and it was very tough for people without using the technology to reach out and get the right information. We introduced a very simple thing, for example, which is the call center for employees for 24 hours as well. So any employee can call through email or through a phone number, try to get the right information and about the company, the policy, etc. On top of having everything available on our internal website. This made a big difference for the people. So now we start, the foundation is there, the policy is there, everything's available, you have access to it as well. Then we start the communication part, improve internal and external communication. We did not even have a corporate communication department at the point of time. So we introduced a corporate communication department. We use the technology, the website, the portal, the mobile app, all of these communication channels. And we continue pushing people to be part of that as well. Not because it's basically a mandatory on people, but basically this is the right way. And we want to make sure, for example, people understand, if you want to be in touch with the organization, and the organization would like to be in touch with you, we're providing to you all the different tools and means to help you to do so as well. And to the point where we start putting actually certain expectations on people, for example, help us to use the technology in a different way. And of course, the pandemic was a very nice example, unfortunately, because when the pandemic came, without all of these systems in place, we could not really deliver what we were looking for as well. Workplace uplifting, it was also very essential for us, basically, that I come and we spend a lot of hours in this organization and in the offices as well. So I come to a place where I found really the basic needs requirements is there, but also a comfortable place as well. Keep in mind that our operator, they operate 24 hours a day, so through different shift mechanism. And even the regulation required the air traffic controller that he cannot be or she cannot be on the hot seat or basically on front of the monitor for 8 hours. They have to work for an hour and a half to 2 hours, then they have to take their break. The break usually basically it's 50% of the number of hours they're working. So if they work for 2 hours, by law, they need to take 1 hour break as well. So previously what happened during that hour, because we could not, I mean, the appropriate facility was not actually giving them what they're looking for. So during that hour, they rush outside to get lunch, to get something, to get a break, to get coffee, and all of that. These simple things were not there, by the way. And that's a very nice example of things that will make a big difference for our people. So when we uplifted the place, we immediately provided the right essential with the right basically quality as well. So during your hour, instead of you going outside and trying to get your basic need, whether it's, for example, coffee, food, etc., we provide all of that to you in the organization with the right quality as well. We even went to the extra mile. We provided some resting area for those people. It's okay for you during your break, because part of your job that you're on the front of the screen, that you can even take a nap. We have some of those basically relaxing room where go take a nap, get relaxed, because after an hour, you're back on that hot seat. You need to manage X number of flights at the same time, and you need to be fully focused as well. And again, with the right regulation behind it as well. And then we said, what about the culture? And how can we basically work on that? And I recall at that point of time, and it was basically a very tough discussion between myself and Abdurrahman, because I invited Abdurrahman to help us to go through that journey through Basiqat. And we said, should we do a culture survey and understand where do we stand? Are people happy, or should we wait and do the difference as well? And I think we agreed at that point of time, no, let's really ask the question. And I think it's the right time to ask, are you happy in your organization? What are really the issues? So we take the outcome of all of that activities and we reflected into our action plan. And in year one, and I think it was back in November, December, Abdurrahman, if I'm not mistaken, in 2017, we ran our first culture survey with, I think, almost 45% participation. We had to force people to participate because they're not aware of what does a culture survey mean. And with around 40% of participation, we scored only 12.7 points or percentage as well. And for us, basically, it was a shock. I come from a corporate where we're always actually targeting 70, 80% in a very advanced culture. And now I come to an organization and my people are saying, I mean, only 12% or 12 point or basically the minimum people are happy with what we're seeing. And the amount of information we got out of that was huge. It was shocking, but it was actually also very helping for us to understand. So all of the first and second and third point that you see in front basically was all activities out of what people really wanted as well. So we did that. We started the work. We started raising the expectation with our people. Then we went again in 2018 and said, okay, so what's happening, guys? Are we on track? We're not on track. Tell us, are we doing things right? Are we really meeting the expectation? I have a lot of expectation from my people to deliver, but then also they have expectation on me that they need me to deliver. So am I actually on the right track or not? We did the survey, it was around 53%. And again, it was amazing. And we were happy, huh? And just to be very clear, moving from 12 to 53%, it was an amazing, changes that we would like to see. But nevertheless, we also got a lot of feedback that there are things that we thought that we're doing right, and apparently we were not. And now let's really put back again the right effort and fixing them as well. And now, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, thanks God, when we went back into 2020, and we did that, for example, even after the pandemic, when people went through very tough times. And by the way, during the pandemic, we need to stop even some compensation for our people because of the financial crisis that we had to went through. Still, more than 80% of our people said that they're satisfied. And the participation was more than 80%, and we were really on the right track. And this is something that we're very proud of as well. Having said that, we start getting even more interested to see more. So we said, are we really doing good and how things? Then we were, I'm not gonna say surprised, but we were also awarded with another thing as well, because we were focusing on the culture and a culture and organization with we work to focus on safety and aviation. People were very concerned about that. Whatever you do will have a direct impact on your operation, and your operation here in SANS, it's all about safety because you're managing aircraft and you're taking care of the life of people. And we always say, for example, we even have a saying here in SANS, basically, that what we do here day in, day out, we manage basically sky, and we basically save lives as well, or secure lives as well. And that's what we do, for example. So our job is really to manage the skies and ensure, for example, that every single passenger in that aircraft is really in safe hands as well. So we got a very nice acknowledgement that during this journey, we've been actually in touch with a lot of global association as well, which is one of them is CANSO, which is the Civil Aviation Navigation Service Organization, which is the main global navigation service organization, which have all the different ANSPs part of it as well. And we're always participating, we're sharing the changes, we're sharing, for example, what has been done. Then we found that even our core business, which is basically for us was very critical, that we don't even impact, but rather would like to improve. Our people and the work that we have done is saying that we got the Global Safety Achievement Award and we took the 5th place. And guess what? What was actually the topic? Safety culture in the organization. And for us, basically, that was even an additional great result that we'd like to basically celebrate. And we did celebrate that with our people, that we have reached a point where even the core business and the culture in the core business, which is the safety culture, have improved dramatically. And it was even acknowledged globally, not only locally. And this is something that we're very proud of that achievements, having said so. So the SANS Safety Culture Building Blocks was a program that we started back in 2018, because as we're doing the cultural aspect and the cultural improvement, we said, so what can we do also in the safety part? And it was very basically emotional for us, basically, that the great work that we're doing in improving the culture, it was actually even reflected in the main core business, which is the safety culture. It's not easy at all. And I mean, Abdurrahman, also, if you recall, during our first plans, we embedded a lot of safety questions in our culture survey, because we understand you cannot have a good culture in a company like the aviation and a Saudi navigation company without having a proper safety culture. So we embedded a lot of safety questions, and we continue putting a lot of effort in fixing that. So when you see that great improvement in your culture, and also when you get awarded and recognized, basically, that even your safety culture has improved dramatically, for us, basically, it's a plus. It's a plus that we really managed to tackle what really need to be delivered. And the main objective of our existence here as a Saudi Navigation is to deliver the business and the service with safe and reliable to our customers. And our people are doing that in a very safe environment, in an environment where they feel comfortable to do the right things, and they're not afraid to do the wrong things, because sometimes actually things happen and we need to manage it differently as well. They're not afraid, for example, to report. And I'll give a very nice example over here, and people might look at it differently. One of the critical elements in any safety culture that people feel comfortable to report issues so we can fix it. And I recall back in 2017 and early 2018, we almost have zero reporting of incidents or any safety observation in the organization. Even though it was basically something that we always encourage people to do, people were afraid. So the culture over there that if you report, then you will get fired. If you report, you will get disciplined, because you should not tell your bosses or your organization or your leadership that you have an issue. It is completely wrong to report something wrong in this organization. And that's the culture that we had in the past. Today, we're celebrating more than 2,000 per year reporting from the people as well. It doesn't mean that there are things wrong, but people have went to the point where they're reporting big issues all the way to minor issues. So the culture became that you walk around in the organization, you see something wrong, please go ahead and report it. We provide the tools, an automated tool. You can easily go on your mobile, you can report whatever example you see required to be reported as well. But more than that, for example, it is a safe culture to be reported. And it is a safe culture that if you do something wrong, not intentionally, of course, if you do something wrong, our job is to help you to understand why it went wrong. And our job basically that to help you how to fix it. I'll give an example where, I don't want to say it's confidential, but again, it's not confidential. So let's take it this way. We had an incident where a controller in one of the location who was operating alone in that location for around 20 minutes, the aircraft was trying to reach that person and they could not. And basically, apparently that person was not feeling well, and he was basically under medication. And during the shift that he was there, because he was the only person over there, I don't want to say he slept, but he relaxed himself for almost 25 minutes. So for 25 minutes, luckily it's a very small airport, they were trying to reach that person and they could not. So again, nothing actually seriously happened. So he was basically back into the job. We talked, but again, the airline reported. So for 25 minutes, they were trying to reach someone and then they could not. So it came to us as a safety incident and we started the investigation. Again, regardless basically of the issue that this controller have basically put the organization in, and regardless by the example that this person even was responsible for some of these actions as well, there was a much bigger problem. How did we allow as an organization for one individual to be in one remote location alone at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning without providing the right support and mean as well? Simply because previously it was more of let's reduce the cost, let's basically not have too many people over there. But we really missed the important factor, which is basically the fatigue management. And how can we ensure, for example, people are being put in a location, for example, where we're not forcing you, sorry for saying that, to go to sleep. We're not forcing you, for example, to miss the focus because you're the only person over there at 4 o'clock in the morning as well. We immediately had a major organization change. We started looking at all of these remote locations. We did a fatigue study for all of these locations. And we found that, for example, that you cannot put someone like that over there. And you need to really basically up staff the number of people. And actually, we even went to the regulation and we ensure, for example, there is no one location where you have one person at any point of time alone, simply because that might actually create a safety concern. So instead of basically simply maybe some other organization will do, for example, go directly and blame that person, we actually start looking what is the fault from our side. And again, that also putting into our perspective why we believe, for example, that, and we're actually working to cope. So it is really safely to report, and we're here actually to fix these things basically for the future as well. This is a quick, I would say, basically a presentation from my side, and the objective basically was really to take you through the journey and take it really through, for example, different activities we have done. I mean, I know it's a quick one, but it was more of just giving you highlights of the different, I would say, steps of our journey and some examples, which I hope basically it really presented the right information that we're looking for as well. And that's it from my side, Abdurrahman. I'm more than happy to listen also from you, Dr. Dan, Abdurrahman, Nadir, and anyone actually have any questions. And sorry if I took a bit longer than expected.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Very good. And Abdurrahman, do you want to start us off with some questions for Ryyan?
No, I just would like to say thank you for Ryan. It was amazing story, and really, it was more amazing for me because I lived the story with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Great. I think it's very interesting that your focus on safety culture. That's a concern and a priority for many of our organizations all over the world. And how do you look at the overlap between the elements of safety culture and the elements of building an effective overall culture? Because it was very interesting, because trying to make people feel that they had the opportunity to raise the issues and the responsibility to do that without fear was a really important part of the safety culture. But that's also an important part of many other aspects of the culture. So that interplay between safety culture and the overall culture of the organization. How do you see that?
I can summarize it in 2 to 3 points as well. Again, normally we say, for example, you need to lead by example, and I think that's something that I personally have emphasized a lot, not only on myself but also on my leadership team as well. In other words, for example, I went to the extreme that where if you report, and I got to be aware that people were put in a different, I would say, pressure because they reported something like that, I would take that things myself, and I would try to investigate that, understand why it happened this way. And again, I always, when I say lead by example, which is basically I get myself involved in every single safety I would say reporting. It's not, for example, that I investigate everyone, but I mean, I put an internal system in the organization where any single safety incident, I have to be aware of it. That's number one. And number two, I need to be aware of the outcome of the investigation. And number three, you need to, and my objective over here, go and fix the issues, the root causes. Do not start your investigation with disciplinary or by actually looking at, for example, the person as well. So that's basically when I use what, for example, lead by example. The second part, which is basically, I do believe a lot that if you put safety is basically an additional expectation on your work, it becomes, for example, more of a burden. And I think a lot of organizations, they fail to do so. For example, when we talk about excellence, you want to have an excellence in your organization, an effectiveness organization. Then you have your day-to-day business, and then you add additional on that. So these are what you need to do extra in order to perfect your operation. These are what you do extra in order to be an excellent organization, or an organization will actually perform with more efficient as well. That's wrong. It should be the other way around. It should be how you do your work. It should be through that, I would say, guidelines and principle that we're going to be delivering in order to be an effective organization. In other words, for example, do not add additional tasks on people under the definition or justification. We're going to do that extra simply because you'd like to be better. No, if you really want to be better, then the way you do your work should be different and should be aiming to do better as well. And that's what I say, for example, don't put safety as an additional task on people, but rather, if you're going to do anything, everything to be done, it has to be done through the right safety in mind and through the right safety practice as well. And third, but not last, which is, I would say continuous communication as well. Keep in mind, basically, that we have, again, around 30 locations, and it's not easy to send the message. So we started with a very clear daily drumbeat in the organization. And again, we have different tool of communication, but I'll give it a very simple one that on a daily basis, we have what we call the daily drumbeat in the organization, the daily operational meeting, which comes, for example, from the unit level all the way to my level in the organization, where information has to go up when it comes to what's happening in the organization, but also what a lot of organizations miss, that the outcome of whatever decision has to go down. So if you as an individual somewhere in the remote area reported something, it will go through the right level of escalation and the right, basically, department to take care of it as well. You have to know as an individual what really happened in that situation that we reported and what was the outcome. And if that basically did not happen, then you would not trust the system as an individual. You would not feel, for example, comfortable. Okay, so I reported an issue, then you're expecting someone to work on it. It doesn't mean that you have to fix it. It might require, for example, a huge investment, but it requires, for example, if it's really an issue that you want to fix it, then that person should know that we're going to fix it by this time, or maybe this is why we cannot do it right now, or why basically which is the right mitigation plan method as well. So the loop of basically the reporting, it goes all the way up and then it goes down to that individual, is very critical for us to make sure, for example, it's happening all the time.
One of the biggest delights of our practice and our work is that you see these kind of pieces of wisdom that you can apply any place in any organization. And very, very interesting that as a leader, you not only need to be listening, paying attention, understanding, but when you communicate the outcome through a person who's well grounded in the event, then you build a thing called trust in the system, and that's a really, really important insight, because that's what senior leaders do, is they have to create trust in the system, because it's always bigger than what you can do as an individual. So thank you very much. It's great insight.
Thank you, Dr. Dan, very much.
Nabil, you were going to raise a
I was going to raise one question, and thank you again, Rian, and thank you, Abdurrahman. Creating transparency and trust is not something you ask for, and you mentioned that you led that effort by walking the talk. How much did you have to do to transform the rest of the leadership to support that?
A lot. I mean, a lot. And I make because you're right, basically. I mean, it will be very bad if someone's sitting somewhere in an office here in Jeddah, which is one city in Saudi. And if I'm sitting here and I have a lot of things in my mind, and then the manager, for example, of the eastern sector, which is basically thousands of kilometers away, is doing something different as well.
Right.
So it took a lot. And that's why we have developed this program where we called Qiyada. Qiyada in Arabic basically means leadership. So we developed a program, and again, that's one of the things that we have mentioned basically. So we're developing leaders, we're not developing managers only as well. So I mean, when I say a lot, because a lot when it comes to effort, when it comes to even financial spending as well, I said we want to do all of that by investing in people, and we did a huge investment in people as well. So it took a lot of systems. It took a lot of, I would say, effort from all of us. From my side, basically, even it took a lot of coaching. I do believe in this coaching mechanism. We even developed this mentoring system where we do believe, for example, that we assign mentors to certain people in the organization where we believe that they need the right support in order to play the role as coaching as well. I'll give you an example where I remember when I used to visit the sites and the locations in Saudi when I first joined, the people were complaining about basic things which should not come to my level. For example, someone is saying, for example, my overtime was not paid on time. Well, sorry, but we have a system. This is by default, it has to be paid on time. Or someone tell you, for example, I had to spend 2 extra hours in the office, but it was not recorded properly because the system was not working. Are you really waiting for your CEO of the company to come and visit you to complain about these things? Because I would rather that you come and sit and complain about much bigger things, which basically I can help. So that's why I said, for example, we really invested a lot in fixing the foundations. But at the same time, I clearly, part of the coaching, that I give clear ownership and responsibility and space for my leaders to operate in their area as well. So part of delegation of authority at that point of time, when I said, for example, so you invest in people, but you give them the authority to take actions as well. And these things, for example, I mean, I have a manager in that sector who should be basically taking care of that basic need of his employees or her employees. And when I go, for example, and we have a much bigger problem related, for example, to certain financial need or certain, for example, organization requirements or even certain conflict that we have, for example, different stakeholders, I can really do a lot in that area. And I think that's where I can even add a lot of values. And it's not, for example, that I cannot add a value in fixing an overtime issue, but that's why we have an HR director, so on speaking, for example, that's part of his role. So a lot of these things, for example, putting the right accountability and giving the right authority for those people and asking them, for example, to deliver on that front, it also made sure, for example, that even the culture changed and the expectation and that lead by example, it goes even to every single leader in the organization. And I say a leader, it doesn't have to be a manager. Every employee is a leader in their area by defining the roles and responsibilities. So, and what is the space and what are the areas that they can deliver in as well.
Thank you, Shukran. Thank you.
I think that's the first time I ever heard a CEO ask people to complain about bigger things.
Yeah,
because it's good.
It's not that I don't want to fix it for them, but honestly speaking, I mean, there are much bigger issues which I think I can add more value than fixing an HR system. But don't get me wrong, it is part of my responsibility.
Yeah.
But we do have a lot of basically systems that need to be fixed. Like again, it's more of where I can add value more, I would say.
That's great. Thank you. Nelly, how about some of the questions that we have from our participants? You want to pose a few of those here? We have a few more minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good one. What were the key areas that you initially focused on from your first survey? And a follow-up to this was that sometimes when the news is bad across the board or not as positive as you would want across the board, it's hard to prioritize actions. How did you go about doing that? I mean,
and I'm sure basically that you know better than me, basically, that there is a hierarchy of need for every organization and need as well. So for me at the beginning, and it was what we mentioned earlier with Dr. Dan, which is trust. I wanted to ensure that I don't force, but actually I want to gain the trust of my organization as well. And Abdurrahman, if you recall, during that point of time, we had a lot of opportunities. And as you mentioned, Neil, I mean, we wanted to focus on all of them, but we cannot. And that's why we said, really, let's focus on the basic need of their employee, and the employees have to be there, but also gaining the trust and bridging the gap between the leadership and every single individual of the organization. So those for me were two critical areas where we put all our effort and even our investment and our and the financial part behind it to invest in as well. Simply because if you really have the trust of your organization, they would understand that it will take some time until you fix everything. And second of all, if you really bridge the gap between your organization and your leadership as well, so people also, it will help to build the trust, but also it will help to ensure, for example, there is a continuous communication going in both directions. So people to say, as well as to get the feedback on what they're doing as well. So these are the two critical things that we wanted to focus on in the beginning as well. And I want to build on that, and then with a very quick example, if you don't mind, for example, during 2020, after the pandemic in March, I mean, all the organizations were hit badly, and aviation were really, really hit. Imagine, for example, that you're managing thousand flights every day, and your organization is being paid through what airlines. And if the airline were grounded, and we went from 100% to less than 5% of air traffic that we're managing, you can imagine how much does that mean actually when it comes to financials. So your revenue was dropped by 95%. Between March and April, my revenue was dropped by 95%. That's a lot. Regardless of how much cash you have in your bank, I mean, you cannot survive like this for a very long time. So we had to take some really critical measure to manage our costs. And some of that had a direct impact on our employees. I assure you, out of the 2,000 employees and with the right communication, these decisions that will have a direct financial impact on employee were actually accepted. We did not lay off a single employee, but rather actually we took the right actions in order to ensure, for example, that every cost that we're minimizing, even it has certain impact on the employee, it will not be in a position where we lay off someone, but rather, for example, that it will be for the bigger picture as well. So all of these decisions were appreciated by our employees with a very clear sense. Once things are back to normal, we might bring, for example, certain things, for example, back, but nevertheless, that's where, back to your question, is we build that trust. So we have a trust from our employees that we're doing the right thing. It's not that we want really to cut your income, but rather, for example, we want to make sure that the 2,000 employees have a safe place to work, not only this year, but the coming years as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe time for one more question before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think so. Are the core values of SANS the same as the SANS strategy depicted on your website? And if so, or if not, what evidence do you have, if any, that your workforce has fully embraced those core values?
I mean, the core values were built at that point of time based on the initial assessment we had in the organization. And that's why, I mean, it will always continue to be evolve. And I'm not going to get changed, but evolve even 2020 as well. So the answer is yes, they are basically the core value in order to support the vision as well. Because when we really developed our vision and mission at that point of time, we wanted to ensure that the core values are really supporting that. But if you look at the core values in SANS, they're very basic. So, I mean, certain companies which are very advanced, the core values might be, for example, even to the innovation part, for example, even to the next level as well. Our core value is very simple. We want to be one team. We'd like to bring the trust. You're the owner. So really, we actually treat everything with the right ownership as well. So we really wanted the core value to be the true basic fundamental of any organization. And that's why, as we speak right now, we're in basically the process of really revisiting our mission and our basically our evolving basically values for the future, because things have changed. Not because we don't want to believe in them anymore, but in the beginning, it was very clear for us, as you're building the foundation, your values also should be not something different from your current culture. The culture, say, for example, these are fundamentals, these are values. It has to be the way we do our business day in, day out as well.
Thank you, Ryyan. And evidence on your efforts and the fruits of your effort is the higher response rates that we've received over the years. So your employees are confident.
Yes, yeah. And thank you for answering that, yeah.
Yeah, congratulations, and thank you
Yeah,
again.
and that's a clear answer. I mean, for that basically. So we see it in the survey, we see it in the acknowledgement even from the outside, and we see it moreover from our customer. We run a customer survey, so all the airlines they need to satisfied with our basically service because they paid for the money. I mean, so it's funny basically. That's one critical evidence basically that our customer in the past used to look us basically as a government entity who's doing the service, whether we like it or not. Today, basically, it's different. We're doing the service because we would like to bring the better service. You are, and we told every employees, these customers, they're paying the money, which basically is part of our financials. So they need to be satisfied. So even the tone from the customer and how basically they're happy with our performance is a true indication that basically we have evolved to something different as well. And something better, I would say.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much,
Thank you very much,
Ryyan,
Frank.
and congratulations for all that you've achieved, and thank you for sharing that with us. I'm really struck by how many kind of universal insights you raise in your work with SANS that any leader around the world that's paying attention can learn and can apply those to their own situation. And that's a great contribution to our forum.
Thank you, and I really appreciate all the effort. And again, just like any other organization, we need certain enabling and tools. And I have to admit, Abdurrahman and the rest of the team and the system of the culture survey. I mean, despite the fact basically it's questions and answers, but I think there's a lot of true value that we get out of them. It's basically how you read that and how you action that as well in the right manner. This is something that we appreciate. And as mentioned before the call, Dr. Dan, I mean, the tough part, basically, how can we sustain? And I think the expectation and the bar have been raised by our employees. Now, basically, we need to see how can we continue the journey and keep that momentum in the right. And that, I would say, excellence and people are continuing, for example, seeing the best in this organization.
We wish you all the best in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll
Thank you for
see
the
you soon.